may be heard before testimony. Briefly, I represent Ms. Levicy.
It doesn't matter that these. Oh, yes. I'm sorry. I need to make an announcement.
Yes. I'm Rod Petty to represent Ms. Levicy, and because we anticipate her testimony involving medical records, in order to be in compliance with the HIPAA regulations, we just request an order allowing her to testify.
Yes, and we discussed that before, and to the extent that any such order may be required under federal HIPAA regulations for her to testify concerning confidential medical records, I am making an order allowing her to do that. Is that sufficient? Okay, thank you.
If you would place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right. Do you solemnly swear your testimony will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Would you state your name?
Tara Levicy.
Can you spell your last name?
Levicy.
Ms. Levicy, how are you employed?
My primary job is emergency department nurse, full-time. I'm also employed by Duke University Medical Center as a sexual assault nursing examiner. I'm also employed by Duke University Medical Center as a sexual assault nursing examiner.
Is that also known as a S.A.N.E. nurse?
Yes, it is.
What is your educational background?
I have a degree in nursing, Bachelor of Science in Nursing from the University of Southern Maine. I also have a Bachelor of Arts and Women's Studies from the University of Maine.
And how long have you been a S.A.N.E. nurse?
I began my training August of 2005, and I completed it in March. My certificate of completion came to me in March of 2006.
We would tend to her as a witness in the area of sexual abuse, sexual assault. Keep calling it sexual assault.
I can't hear Mr. Freeman.
Okay. We would tend to her as an expert in the area of sexual assault.
Do you need to do that? Isn't she a fact witness and can testify as to what opinion she gave? I just want to keep the record as simple as possible, if that's sufficient.
That's fine.
Okay.
Did you have the opportunity to see Crystal Mangle?
Yes, I did.
When did you see Crystal Mangle?
The morning of March 14th.
The morning of March 14th?
Yes, sir.
Approximately what time did you see her?
Well, my shift starts at 7. I got a report, like I usually do, and then I was asked by the charge nurse to take this case I'd come in the night before. So at some point after 7 o'clock is when I first met Ms. Mangle.
7 a.m.?
After 7 a.m.
And when you first saw her, where was she?
She was in what's called our old fast track hallway. They're doing renovations at the time. She was on a stretcher in one of the old fast track rooms.
And was she with anyone?
At that moment, she was not.
You're going to need to speak up. The acoustics in here are really bad.
Where should I start from again? It was called the fast track. It's the old hallways they had done doing renovations at the time. It was in a room off that hallway.
And when she first came in, who was she with?
I found her by herself.
And what did you understand why she was there to see you?
I knew from the charge nurse that she had come in complaining that she was looking for a sexual assault kit to be done. So I knew that was my role to go and perform a sexual assault exam.
Did you smell any alcohol about her?
I did not.
Did she appear impaired to you in any fashion?
She did not.
Over what period of time were you with her?
I have to look at the documents to be perfectly sure, but after 7 a.m. until her discharge was in that afternoon.
Would you say you were with her approximately 6 to 7 hours?
I have to look at the documents to be perfectly sure, but she was discharged sometime in the afternoon.
If you could look at exhibit number 204.
How do... Okay.
All right, would you go to page 5? See where it says 10:30?
I do.
Can you see, look to the 4th line down, see if that helps refresh your recollection as to how long you were with her that night, or that morning?
I'm sorry, could you tell us what page we're on?
Page 5.
And which entry? Which entry? I just can't hear you.
10:30.
It says that she stayed the victim from that point, never changed him for 6-7 hours, the time period they were together. So it must have been approximately that time I was with her.
And during that period of time with her, what did you do?
I examined her, did head-to-toe exam. Dr. Manley performed the entire kit, and I assisted Dr. Manley performing the SBI kit. Dr. Manley performed the pelvic exam, and I then retained chain of custody of the kit.
Without going into details of everything she told you, did she tell you what? Did she tell you what events she alleged to have occurred during those early morning hours?
She said that there was ejaculation in her mouth, that she bore these.
Again, just without going through all the details, did she
Okay.
tell you what had occurred during the early morning hours, what she said had occurred during early morning hours of March 14th?
I'm not sure I clearly understand the question you're asking, sir.
Did she tell? She came in telling. Did she come in telling you that she had been sexually assaulted?
Yes, she did.
Did she give you a version of what she said had happened during the sexual assault?
Yes, she did.
Was she consistent with you during the time you were with her about that version?
Yes, she was.
Did her, during that 6 or 7 hour period, did her version ever change?
No, sir.
And did she, was a physical exam done as well?
Yes, it's a physical exam that's done.
And between what you observed and a physical exam, did she appear to you to be consistent with someone who'd been a victim of a sexual assault?
Based on what she had reported to me, and then her physical findings of tenderness, there was a congruency between her report and her findings.
And you reported that, you asked her specifically whether condoms were used?
I did.
And she told you no?
Yes.
Based on your experience as a S.A.N.E. nurse, do you know if sexual assault victims always know whether condoms are used?
I cannot say as a S.A.N.E. nurse. I can say as a nurse, in my experience, that patients have come in looking for things like the morning after pill because they were not sure that a condom was used the night before.
Has your experience been of someone, so they were not sure whether but did they tell you that they were not sure whether condom was used, or they told you that no condom was used, and then you knew for the morning hour? Strike that my question. Did you proceed, and in no time did she appear impaired to you, is that correct?
She did not.
Did you notice, was there any change in her behavior when males were around?
When I first encountered Ms. Mangum, I had gone and gotten a Durham crisis response counselor who was in the waiting area. And she had he came back to the room with me before I brought her to the S.A.N.E. room. I left to go get a wheelchair for her to go to the S.A.N.E. room, and she began screaming when I left the room when she was left alone with the Durham crisis response order.
Were you interviewed by Detective Hyman?
I gave a phone. There's a phone call from Dr. Hyman.
And is that interview reflected on Exhibit 204, first entry?
Is this one that you asked me about prior?
No, your first interview was with, look at Exhibit 202.
Okay.
Your first interview, go down where it says 3/16/06, 1100 hours, you see that?
I do.
And does that reflect the interview? If you have a chance to look at that, does that reflect what you were able to talk about with Detective Hyman on that occasion?
That's true.
You were not unable to divulge the patient information, but you stated there were signs consistent with sexual assault during the test, is that correct?
That's true.
Further, were you interviewed on subsequent occasion by law enforcement?
My only interview I can recall would be in January of 2006.
And that's when you were interviewed by Detective Hyman and by Linwood Wilson, is that correct?
That's correct.
And if you could turn to Exhibit 202 and go to page 36. And if you look at where it says 11007, see that toward the bottom?
I do.
Does that reflect the interview you had with Detective Hyman and Linwood Wilson?
I would have to read this all the way through to tell you that is true.
Oh, I'm sorry. Take your time. And that appears to reflect the interview you had with Detective Hyman, or Investigator Hyman and Linwood Wilson, is that correct?
There, for the most part, I mean, what it's difficult to gauge is that there's not the questions that were asked of me. There was about 3 hours worth of an interview, but no questions that directly ask what they're asking of me. So there's pieces I believe that are missing from it.
Oh, it's a summary of the interview that you had with him, is that correct?
That's true.
And there may be some pieces missing, but the information in that interview is all correct.
I'm objecting to leaving.
It's 7:30. I thought.
I know.
We'll look at the late hours section of that lead. You understand the question is, Levicy?
I do. I know that there might be some things that are wrong, like the word gurney I would not use. There's maybe a few things that are slightly incorrect, but I think for the most part it's a summary.
And could you also turn to exhibit number 11 on the vote? And is that, the front page of that is S.A.N.E, is that correct?
That's correct.
And it's the rest of the, can you look through the rest of the document, exhibit, and tell us what that is? Just look through it all, and this is what tells us what the document is.
It is a chart that was completed by myself and Dr. Manley on the day that I saw this patient.
Okay, and that's where, you prepared that on March 14th? I've got no further questions.
Ms. Levicy, did you volunteer to come here today, or were you subpoenaed to come here?
I was subpoenaed to come here today.
I'm going to be really quick.
Okay.
In the exhibit you were looking at earlier that appeared to be investigator Hyman's notes, exhibit 202, was that from an interview that took, I'm just going to ask you this one question, you're welcome to look at it if you want to, but was that from an interview that took place on January the 10th, 2007?
This is in 202.
I'm sorry, do you recall when you met with Mr. Wilson, investigator
That would
Hyman?
be the January of this year.
It was January of 2007.
I'm sorry, yes.
That's all I need to know about that. Let's go to Exhibit 11. This is the report that you and Dr. Manley prepared.
Yes.
Let me ask you to turn to page 538, please.
Okay.
You see down there at the bottom, I'm not going to ask you to read that the entire sentence, but do you see down at the bottom where it says, did not use a condom? It's about the fourth line from the bottom.
Yes, I do.
And if you would turn to page 551. Do you see, it looks like Roman numeral 1, description of the incident, and then there's a letter 1, I mean number 1.
Yes.
And without asking you to read all of that, do you see at the end of that line it says, no condoms used?
Yes.
And then there's also an entry number 11 on that same page 551, which asks, was a condom used during the assault? Is that right?
I do.
And there are 3 choices. One is yes, one is no, and one is not sure.
That's true.
And you checked not sure? Oh, excuse me, you checked no?
Check no.
Now, if someone were reading this report, which is the report you took on the night that you met Ms. Mangum.
The morning.
I'm sorry, the morning. The only information that would be included in this report about condoms is the fact that there were no condoms used in the alleged attack. Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Would you go back to, sorry to make you jump around, but go back to Exhibit 202. Would you go to page 37? And if you go in the first full paragraph, about 2/3 of the way down, you see a sentence that starts, Ms. Levicy stated.
I do.
Would you read that?
Ms. Levicy stated that she asked if condoms were used. Ms. Mangum said no, but was unsure. Ms. Levicy stated that in her experience and training. Well, how far should I read to? I'm not sure.
Next sentence.
Victims can't be sure if condoms were used because if the victim cannot see them, how would you know?
I've got no further questions.
Just very briefly, what you were just reading from is the notes, the summary of an interview that was conducted in January of 2007. Is that right?
That's right.
It is true that there's no indication in the report that you took on March the 14th of 2006 that there was any uncertainty or that Ms. Mangum was unsure about whether condoms were used. Is that right?
That's true.
It simply says in 3 places, no condom.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Levicy.
Thank you, ma'am.
May she be excused?
Yes. Yes.
I'd like to take a break soon, but if,
I think all of our witnesses are relatively short at this point. Yeah.
okay. Let's go ahead and take another witness and then take a short break after that.
Judge Brandon.
All right. All right.
Do you swear the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.